Truth is making a comeback. America's Top Stories with Lisa K. Donner.
One of the most popular articles on LibertyNation.com week in and week out is Tim Donner's culling of the wacky and damnable things said by politicians and the chattering class. Considering CNN hosted a 7-hour televised affair on climate change, the fields are fertile this week. What, pray tell, could be said in 7 hours by the Dems to make the cut? Well, a lot. I've asked our Washington political columnist to join us on today's show to highlight some of these. Hi, Tim. Are you still alive after sifting through 7 hours of this stuff?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Lisa. That's my idea of a fun evening, spending 420 consecutive minutes watching Democrats rail about climate change catastrophe. See, it's no longer global warming. It's no longer climate change. It's even now moved after CNN's town hall forum away from climate crisis to climate catastrophe, Lisa. And yet, it doesn't even finish climate change on the top 10 list of issues for Americans. And yet, Democrats are out to convince us that there's a mortal threat to the planet that must be addressed right now by essentially scrapping the entire economy and starting over.
All right, well, let's just jump right in. In the words of that brilliant political scientist, Jimmy Buffett, I guess there will be no more cheeseburgers in paradise.
Not this lifetime.
So with all the weighty matters in the world, Senator Kamala Harris seemed tremendously concerned about the planet-wide plastic straw crisis.
Yeah, well, Kamala has a way of projecting that she hasn't really thought through issues. And part of the reason she's stuck at single digits after taking on Joe Biden on the issue of race in the first debate is that there's so many answers like this one I'm about to play, so many times where they ask her a difficult issue and she says, well, I think we should have a conversation about that. This is the presidential primary. This is where you have the conversation. But let's listen to what she had to say on that one weighty issue.
Plastic straws are a big thing right now.
Yeah.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should. Yes. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. It's really difficult to drink out of a paper straw when if you don't gulp it down immediately, it starts to bend. Yes. And then, the little thing catches it. And then, so we got to kind of perfect that one a little bit more.
That woman is running for president of the United States, Lisa.
Yeah, and let me just say, she didn't seem real hep on banning plastic straws.
But she's like, I think we should. In other words, someone running for president doesn't want to just arbitrarily say on the spur of the moment, plastic straws. Let me think. Yeah, let's just get rid of them. Let's overturn entire industries. Because I kind of think it'd be a good idea because my left-wing base wants me to do it. That's what it came off as.
Moving right along, it was almost breathtaking to me that Joe Biden perceives millions of people foregoing their cars in favor of light rail.
Well, not many people picked up on this, Lisa, because they were focused on the blood that was increasingly concentrated in the former vice president's eye, his left eye, as his appearance on this endless town hall meeting on CNN progressed. And it took some of the, I don't know. I don't think light rail is something that anybody even thinks about. But for Joe Biden, it's the solution.
Should the U.S. ban fossil fuel exports, as some other candidates are calling for?
Well, I think we should, in fact, depending on what it is they're exporting for, what they're replacing. Everything is incremental. Everything is incremental. For example, you talked earlier about transportation. I've been pushing really hard for mass transit and for rail. We can take millions of vehicles off the road if we had high-speed rail. I've been a champion of that for the last 25 years.
Now, Lisa, that was quintessential Joe Biden, because the first thing he did was he stumbled and bumbled. You didn't even know what he was saying. And then he is promoting an idea that's been thoroughly discredited, light rail, to the point where California, the leader in this, had to shut down their own light rail project, infrastructure project, because it would cost just way too much and wasn't feasible. And now Joe Biden wants to do it across the whole nation.
Is it really? It is really actually astonishing to me, and I wonder how this is going to go over in a city like Los Angeles, where people are notoriously addicted to driving the freeway in their cars.
Well, and light rail basically, Lisa, benefits people who are well-heeled. Light rail is not something that the average man on the street is going to benefit from so much as the white progressive, rich white progressives who will use it on a regular basis.
All right, so looking at the big picture, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, aka Spartacus, waxed on the enormity of the climate change catastrophe.
Well, the thing about Spartacus was, and this is actually from MSNBC, because not to be outdone by CNN's 420-minute unbroken chain of climate change alarmism, they wanted in on the action as well. So Chris Hayes brought on Spartacus, Senator Cory Booker, onto MSNBC, and he sounded the alarm bells.
It does feel like a matter of time. Just a question of when, of how many climate disasters we're going to see increasingly here in the mainland of the United States.
This is no longer up for debate in most Americans' hearts and minds, except for a narrow group of leadership that is doing the bidding of the fossil fuel industries and other massive corporate lobbyists who are trying to stop us doing action. And meanwhile, the consensus of global scientists are saying if we do not act with a sense of urgency in about an 11-year window, the catastrophic effects on humanity, we better plan for planetary crisis, migratory problems, extremism, famines, the kind of things that if we do not act that we will see on the planet Earth.
Essentially, Lisa, the end of the world as we know it by 2030. And he and his fellow Democratic candidates are asking people to overturn the entire American system in order to account for this threat, which is entirely unproven and entirely theoretical. And by the way, in his bite, just to set it straight, there's no such thing as a global scientist, just as there is no such thing as climate science until Al Gore came along, and then suddenly there was a new burgeoning field called climate science, for which there's no certification.
Well, talk about a dystopian view of the world. I mean, this guy's talking about the apocalypse. But we must move on. I thought it was very odd, an odd moment when Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, commingled climate change with abortion.
I mean, it's breathtaking. And what it reveals, I think, Lisa, is that for Democrats, these issues are all interconnected as social justice issues. Climate is social justice. Abortion is social justice. Immigration is social justice. So they go far beyond just saying that let's just fix the climate. The Green New Deal is about a lot more than the climate. It's about social justice, environmental justice, abortion justice, and when it came to Bernie, when they went straight at him, and you've got to listen, by the way, this is as much about the questioner as it is about the answer from Bernie, where he's asked about climate change and answers about abortion. But listen to the question, because it's very revealing of the mindset of the far left.
Human population growth has more than doubled in the past 50 years. The planet cannot sustain this growth. I realize this is a poisonous topic for politicians, but it's crucial to face. Empowering women and educating everyone on the need to curb population growth seems a reasonable campaign to enact. Would you be courageous enough to discuss this issue and make it a key feature of a plan to address climate catastrophe?
Well, Martha, the answer is yes. And the answer has everything to do with the fact that women in the United States of America, by the way, have a right to control their own bodies and make reproductive decisions.
I mean, I don't know where the connection is, but here's where it might be. When they talk about population control, which is another thoroughly discredited idea, we talked about it a lot in the 1970s. that population control would solve world poverty. It hasn't worked. But what they're doing here, what Bernie's doing here, I think is saying that population control is important. And the way to do that is to have essentially abortion, unlimited abortion on demand. And there is where the connection can perhaps be made.
Well, you're right about that. Well, we've got to wrap this up, but we should end with some Cherokee wisdom from Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Well, no one quite goes on the warpath like Pocahontas when it comes to climate change and every other most radical socialist deconstructionist policy than Pocahontas. She gives voice to it better than anyone, I think, and she is rising in the polls steadily. And here's what she had to say at the endless CNN debate.
We better be willing to put the resources into it because the alternative is unthinkable. Life on Earth is at risk. And if we don't make this commitment, we not only cheat our children, we cheat their future and their children's future, and that is morally wrong.
So for Pocahontas, it's a moral imperative. Climate change, climate crisis, the coming climate catastrophe. It's all a matter of when, not if.
I actually talk about this later in the show with Sarah Cowgill, but she always sounds so angry to me, that is Elizabeth.
Well, she's what you call a scolding school marm. She's the kind of woman you had as a homeroom teacher in the 4th grade who stood there with a ruler ready to whack you on your hand if you did something wrong, and always hectoring and lecturing you. I'd like to see her smile a little more.
Yeah, the original hall monitor. Well, thank you, Tim. We've got to wrap this up, and I would like to urge our viewers to hit libertynation.com and read your fine article this week, The Psychotic Left and the Trump Emergency. Just really high quality political science and analysis. Thanks so much for joining us, Tim.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Lisa.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at libertynation.com.